Story main theme: an alien queen underestimates humans until witnessing their hidden strength, realizing her civilization misjudged humanity's potential. The story explores the tension between fear, respect, and unexpected admiration across species. The sky above the city shimmered with a hue no human had ever catalogued, a molten sapphire that pulsed as though it had a heartbeat. Melara's starship descended with a grace that mocked gravity, its hull reflecting the streets below like a liquid mirror. She leaned over the observation console, long ears flicking with amusement as she studied the creatures that scuttled below in their chaotic little lives. "So fragile," she murmured, her voice melodic but carrying the crisp edge of superiority. Her advisors hovered behind her, all three equally anxious, their antennae twitching nervously. "Remember, Your Majesty," one squeaked. "They are unpredictable. Do not underestimate." She waved them off with a slender hand, her silver hair drifting like a comet's tail around her shoulders. "I am under no illusions," she said, though a faint smirk tugged at her lips. "I know exactly how entertaining they are." From this height, humanity was almost laughable. They ran in every direction, bumping into one another, tripping over their own shoelaces, and gesturing wildly at glowing rectangles in their hands. One man nearly collided with a streetlight, and she chuckled so suddenly that the echo startled her advisors. "How quaint," she whispered, tilting her head. "They are performing their own version of a mating dance, I assume." Another human slipped on a puddle, flailing like a newborn deer before regaining balance in a triumphant, if ungraceful, pose. Melara's long ears twitched in appreciation. "Remarkable," she said, eyes sparkling. "They stumble, yet they do not break. Perhaps a lesson in resilience, though unrefined." Her advisors groaned collectively, but Melara barely noticed. She had arrived to observe, to study, to catalog, and perhaps, if her mood took a particularly mischievous turn, to mock. She descended closer to the streets, invisible, letting her presence slip unnoticed among the humans. She watched them queue for small glowing boxes, speak in urgent tones about something called emails, and gesticulate as if their hands had minds of their own. One woman waved frantically at an object hovering above her head, which turned out to be a rogue drone with more enthusiasm than skill. Melara burst into laughter, and one human dropped his coffee, flinging the brown liquid like a chaotic river onto the pavement. She raised a finger to silence herself, but only for a moment, for the absurdity of the scene drew laughter again from deep within her chest. "What are they so concerned about?" she asked. "A liquid substance, brown, heated, does it provide sustenance or is it simply ceremonial?" Her advisors tried to explain the intricacies of caffeine, but she cut them off with a graceful wave. "No matter, their panic is delightful." Humor, she realized, was one of humanity's strange but alluring traits. Even in minor disaster, they laughed or cursed or yelled at each other in ways that made no sense to her, and yet it was infectious. On a whim, she projected a tiny holographic image of a dancing alien, one of her people, across the sidewalk. The humans nearby jumped back, screamed in alarm, and then, one by one, began imitating it, their limbs flailing in imitation. Melara's long ears flattened against her head as she doubled over in laughter, the sound musical and dangerous, like glass wind chimes in a storm. She had expected chaos, yes, but this spontaneous humor and adaptation was unexpected, almost entertainingly elegant. As she moved among them, invisible, she began to notice patterns beneath the chaos. Humans spoke to each other in strange codes, waving fingers and blinking lights at small boxes. They built contraptions from scraps of metal, discarded plastics, and occasionally pure luck, creating objects that functioned in ways Melara had not anticipated. One group appeared to argue endlessly about the angle of a metallic arm attached to a cylindrical object, only to have the arm lift perfectly and carry a load of small boxes up a slope without faltering. She raised an eyebrow, something she rarely did, as her mind processed this. "Ingenious," she said softly, Her long ears twitched with a mixture of disbelief and delight. "They are clumsy yet clever, frighteningly so." Her amusement didn't stop at observation. When a child chased a small floating sphere and fell face first into the soft turf of a park, Melara projected a gentle gust of wind to float the sphere back to him. He looked up at the sky, eyes wide, and giggled. A human, entirely unacquainted with alien magic, found wonder in the mundane, and it drew a genuine smile from her. Her advisors exchanged worried glances. "Your Majesty," one whispered, "do you intend to intervene further?" She laughed again, a sound that made the air itself vibrate. Not intervene, merely experiment. Experimenting in her mind was an art form. She created small, harmless illusions. A man suddenly appearing to wear a hat shaped like a spaceship, a woman's umbrella glowing with neon colors, and even a street sign that momentarily changed to display cryptic alien symbols. Humans reacted with confusion, surprise, and laughter, each response more fascinating than the last. Melara observed carefully, noting resilience, ingenuity, and most importantly, the capacity to adapt while laughing at themselves. This, she decided, was a quality her own species often lacked. Her long ears quivered in silent appreciation as one particularly bold human began photographing the signs and the glowing umbrella, taking joy in documenting absurdity rather than panicking. By nightfall, Melara withdrew to the observation deck of her ship, gazing down at the city as lights flickered and moved like living constellations. Her laughter had subsided, replaced by quiet contemplation. The humans were not dangerous yet. They were weak in obvious ways, but they were not simple. There was a spark of chaos wrapped in curiosity and humor that she did not fully understand. "We shall see how far this spark reaches," she murmured, brushing a strand of silver hair behind her long ear. Her advisors looked at each other nervously, unsure if her tone was admiration or subtle warning. Melara tilted her head, watching a stray dog chase its tail in the moonlight, and smiled. "For now," she said softly, "I shall continue observing. This entertainment has only just begun." Hours later, as she slipped into a dreamless sleep, her mind replayed images of humans tripping, laughing, inventing, and cheering at their own small triumphs. For all their apparent fragility, she realized something quietly unsettling. There was an energy here, a chaotic determination, that even her long-eared civilization had underestimated. And somewhere beneath her laughter, beneath the jokes and playful illusions, a subtle seed of respect had been planted. One day, she thought as she drifted into unconsciousness, she might have to reconsider everything she had assumed about this unpredictable species. But for tonight, at least, she would simply enjoy the show. Melara's long ears twitched as the first rays of a synthetic sun streamed through her observation chamber, bouncing off the polished interior of her starship. She had spent the night reviewing the data streams collected on humanity, and the patterns emerging were unexpected. Her initial amusement had evolved into genuine curiosity, a dangerous state for someone who had believed herself invulnerable. The humans were messy, chaotic, and often downright ridiculous, but beneath that chaotic veneer lay ingenuity that defied her assumptions. She hovered invisibly over a human city, scanning the streets with sensors that picked up energy fluctuations, communication signals, and even subtle emotional waves. A group of humans was arguing over the trajectory of a small, makeshift drone, tossing it back and forth like a child's toy while trying to calibrate its flight path with a rudimentary computer. Melara's long ears flattened against her head in amusement. "They quarrel, they bicker, and yet somehow it works," she murmured. One human tripped over his own shoelaces, the drone careening wildly, and another laughed so hard she nearly fell into a fountain. Melara chuckled, shaking her head. "Ingenious chaos," she muttered. Her advisors hovered close, antennae quivering. "Your Majesty, might we remind you this species is still physically weak. Observe, they stumble at every step." Melara tilted her head, eyes glinting. Physical weakness does not preclude creativity, she said, projecting a holographic sphere of light above the humans. It hovered silently, and within seconds, a young man was leaping to intercept it, failing spectacularly, only to improvise a small catapult from scraps of metal to redirect the sphere. Her laughter rang out, musical and bright. They find solutions even when failing, she said softly, and they laugh while doing it. She descended further, following them through narrow streets and crowded marketplaces. Humans were interacting with machines she had considered rudimentary, twisting and adjusting, sometimes shouting instructions to one another, sometimes cursing at the malfunctioning devices. One man accidentally triggered a streetlight, causing a small explosion of sparks. The humans nearby jumped back in alarm, but instead of despair, they high-fived each other and began recording the sparks on glowing devices. They celebrate misfortune, Melara whispered, tilting her head. They convert chaos into amusement, I must note this. Her long ears twitched in curiosity as she observed the mechanics of their society. Humans built and dismantled machines with a speed and improvisation her people rarely practiced. They argued over designs, accidentally broke components, and then, somehow, produced functioning inventions. A young woman had connected a solar panel, a discarded fan, and a weather balloon to power a small neighborhood. Melara blinked, fascinated. So primitive yet functional, she muttered. Perhaps they are not to be underestimated. Humor played an unexpected role in their strength. When a sudden, minor explosion sent a cloud of smoke across the street, a man popped out wearing a colander on his head, waving a broom like a staff. Nearby children imitated him, jumping and chanting nonsensical rhymes. Laughter echoed through the street, and the humans, despite the minor hazard, continued their tasks with renewed energy. Melara's long ears flicked back and forth in delight. They weaponize absurdity, she murmured, unpredictable and yet effective. She projected herself more directly into their world, creating subtle illusions to test reactions. A holographic meteor streaked across the sky, small but bright. Humans screamed in alarm, then scrambled, then improvised an assortment of contraptions to track its path. Some tripped, some shouted, some argued heatedly, but eventually the meteor's path was mapped with crude sensors and colored lights. Melara's amusement deepened. They panic, but they solve problems while panicking. Ingenious, ridiculous, brilliant. Her advisors exchanged worried glances, whispering about human unpredictability, while she only smiled, long ears quivering in appreciation. The day unfolded with a series of minor crises she instigated. A small robot malfunctioned in a public square, releasing harmless foam that covered the surrounding humans. They slipped and flailed, screamed and laughed, yet they quickly turned the foam into a playground, rolling and leaping across it, inventing games on the spot. Melara observed with a fascination bordering on admiration. Creativity thrives in chaos, she said softly, noting the contrast with her own people, who prized control above all. Her long ears twitched, and she realized that laughter was not weakness. It was energy, it was adaptability, it was resilience. As the evening fell, she retreated to the rooftop of an abandoned building, watching humans gather around small fires and lights, sharing food, stories, and laughter. A man tripped over a log, spilling his drink, and another erupted in exaggerated lamentation, only to collapse into laughter. Melara's eyes glimmered and she almost leaned forward, tempted to intervene, but she restrained herself. Observing was far more illuminating than controlling. Her long ears twitched with delight as she realized that humanity's strength was not in weapons or numbers, but in their capacity to improvise, to endure, and to transform mistakes into triumphs, or at least entertainment. By nightfall, Melara's ship hovered silently over the city, the hum of the engines blending with the distant human laughter and music. Her mind raced as she replayed the day's events. Every stumble, every ridiculous accident, every laughter-filled improvisation was a data point in a larger, more troubling pattern. Humans were far more resourceful than she had assumed. She twirled a strand of silver hair between her long ears and muttered, "So fragile and yet resilient, so chaotic and yet adaptive, I must reconsider." Even her humor had evolved. She began imagining future scenarios where humans faced more serious threats, wondering how they would react with the same combination of chaos, laughter, and creativity. Her long ears flicked in anticipation, and a small, mischievous smile tugged at her lips. For the first time, Melara felt a faint, thrilling sense of unease. Not fear exactly, but the unsettling realization that this species, which she had intended to mock, might one day surprise her in ways she could not predict. She drifted into sleep within her observation chamber, a gentle hum of the starship lulling her, yet even in dreams, her mind replayed human ingenuity, laughter, and chaos. She saw small inventions, improbable successes, and spontaneous celebrations. Somewhere beneath her laughter and subtle jokes, a seed of respect had been planted, growing quietly, threatening to bloom into something she had never expected. The humans were flawed, unpredictable, and absurdly humorous, but she understood, even if only dimly, that their true power was not yet visible, and when it revealed itself, it would not merely amuse her. It might redefine everything she thought she knew about the fragile creatures called humans. The warning came not as a siren, not as a sudden flash, but as a subtle shift in the sensors of Melara's starship, a tremor in the cosmic currents that hummed beneath the galaxy. An asteroid, massive and jagged, hurtled through space toward Earth with a velocity that no human instrument could have reliably predicted, and even her advisors were tense. Melara's long ears twitched as she surveyed it, a jagged shadow against the black velvet of space. "So," she murmured, fingers brushing the console, "this is where the entertainment begins in earnest." Below, humans were oblivious at first, running about with mundane concerns. Children still chased hovering toys, adults argued over minor inconveniences, and stray dogs barked at nothing in particular. Melara almost laughed aloud, imagining the chaos that would erupt when the humans discovered their impending doom. She flicked a hand, projecting a subtle holographic warning above the city, and watched as panic flickered like a short-circuited light. People screamed, shouted, and ran in every direction. One man tripped over a stray bicycle, landing headfirst in a trash bin, only to pop up with a grin and shout, "Well, that's one way to check gravity." Melara's long ears quivered with delight, a musical twinge of amusement. "Even in panic they joke," she said softly. "They laugh while facing annihilation." As the humans scrambled, Melara observed their improvisation. Engineers dismantled old satellites, repurposed solar arrays, and rerouted city energy grids with a speed and creativity that defied her previous assumptions. Children delivered messages through networks of small drones, laughing as one drone crashed spectacularly into a bakery, scattering flour and pastries across the square. The chaos was absurd, hilarious even, yet productive. Melara's long ears flattened against her head in sheer fascination. "They turn every misstep into an advantage," she whispered. "So fragile, yet unstoppable." She decided to intervene subtly, projecting her presence in tiny, almost imperceptible ways, nudges of energy here, a calibration tweak there, enough to ensure their survival without robbing them of the glory of improvisation. One particularly inventive human rigged a makeshift magnetic cannon from playground equipment and scrap metal, launching small debris to nudge the asteroid's path. It bounced, ricocheted, and misfired more times than Melara could count, but each error led to a new, better adjustment. She chuckled aloud as sparks flew, a symphony of accidental brilliance, and even her advisors leaned closer, trying to contain their own nervous excitement. A small girl accidentally triggered a confetti cannon intended for a birthday party, covering the engineers in bright paper explosions. They shrieked, slipped, and flailed, yet quickly incorporated the misfire into a larger strategy, using the momentum of the paper-filled air currents to redirect lightweight debris. Melara's long ears quivered with amusement. They weaponized joy, she whispered. Chaos and humor as tools, ingenious. As the asteroid approached, the humans' creativity became breathtaking. They adapted, improvised, argued, laughed, and occasionally tripped in perfect harmony. One man shouted, "We're doomed," and another replied, "Not if we don't die laughing." A tiny drone clipped a transmission tower, sparking a chain reaction that sent messages to thousands of volunteers, coordinating energy pulses to nudge the asteroid's trajectory. Melara's eyes glimmered. Her long ears twitched as she realized that this species, which she had assumed weak, had turned fear into action, chaos into strategy, and humor into resilience. When the final maneuver succeeded, the asteroid, which had threatened annihilation, veered harmlessly past Earth, a shimmering reminder of near catastrophe. The humans erupted in triumph, some hugging, some dancing, some tripping into each other and laughing hysterically. A stray dog barked at the celebration, and a small child tied balloons to a robot that had assisted in the calculations, sending it floating across the plaza. Melara's laughter joined theirs, musical and resonant, echoing through the night sky. Her long ears twitched as she realized she had been wrong in every assumption she had ever made about humanity. She turned to her advisors, long ears drooping with a mixture of awe and shame. "We made a huge mistake," she said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of revelation. "This species is not merely clever, they are resilient, inventive, and amusing in ways we could not predict." Her advisors nodded solemnly, some muttering apologies, others too stunned to speak. Melara's mind replayed the weeks of observation, the improvisation, the humor, the resilience, the unbroken spirit, the ability to transform failure into triumph, and the infectious laughter that seemed to fuel their ingenuity. She descended to the city's outskirts, revealing herself for the first time. Humans froze, startled by the silver hair and long ears that marked her as alien, yet fear quickly dissolved into awe and curiosity. A small boy approached her, holding a holographic ball he had been using to experiment with trajectory calculations. "Did you help us?" he asked, eyes wide. Melara's lips twitched into a smile. "I observed," she replied. "But you, your creativity, your humor, your resilience, saved yourselves." The boy nodded solemnly, then ran back to join his friends, still laughing. Melara realized in that moment that her journey among humans had changed her. She had arrived to observe, to mock, perhaps to dominate. Instead, she had been taught something her civilization had long forgotten. Strength could come from imperfection, power could emerge from chaos, and respect could be earned through humor and ingenuity rather than fear. Her long ears flicked in satisfaction as she watched humans celebrating, dancing, and improvising even in relief. She understood now that the galaxy was far more complex than her species had assumed, and that even the smallest, clumsiest creatures could surprise the mightiest observers. As night fully fell, Melara returned to her starship, hovering silently above the city. The humans continued their celebrations, unaware of the alien queen who now regarded them with awe rather than disdain. She reflected on their journey together. The absurdities, the inventions, the laughter, and the near disasters turned triumphs. Her long ears quivered in quiet amusement as she thought, "We underestimated them, yet they endured. We doubted them, yet they proved themselves. Perhaps we have much to learn from these chaotic, brilliant, irrepressible humans." For the first time, Melara felt humility and admiration intertwined. She had begun this journey believing in superiority and detachment, but she ended it with laughter, respect, and a touch of wonder. The humans had taught her that power was not merely force, but creativity, adaptability, and joy even in the face of danger. And as the first light of dawn touched the city, Melara knew she would never see the galaxy, or her own people, in quite the same way again. The asteroid had passed, the humans had prevailed, and the alien queen, once a ruler of superiority and pride, had discovered that the true measure of strength was not domination, but the resilience of spirit, the spark of ingenuity, and the unexpected power of a species that laughed in the face of chaos. Her long ears flicked once more as she smiled, silently promising that the lessons she had learned would echo throughout her civilization, and perhaps, just perhaps, humanity's chaotic brilliance would finally be recognized for what it truly was.